At 19, Ibrar had never imagined that her life would change so quietly, so slowly. In a place where the wind seemed to speak more than the people, she had grown up in a bustling town, where the streets hummed with noise and the lights never slept. But now, with a small suitcase in hand and a letter of introduction clutched nervously against her chest, she had arrived in the village of Willowbrook, a place tucked between rolling hills and endless fields of golden wheat. The sun was just beginning to dip toward the horizon, spilling a soft, amber glow over the thatched cottages and narrow dirt roads. Ibrar inhaled deeply, tasting the air, fresh, earthy, and fragrant with the smell of soil and wildflowers. For a moment she felt both thrilled and uncertain. This was not the world she had known, yet something about it called to her, promising quiet, simple beauty. Her destination was a small farmhouse at the edge of the village, where she had been offered work assisting a local family. She had not yet met the farmer herself, only heard whispers from neighbors of a solitary man who worked the land from sunrise to sunset. They said he was kind but quiet, a man of few words, with eyes that seemed to hold 1,000 untold stories. As she approached the farmhouse, the fields stretched out before her in waves of amber and green. The soft rustle of wheat in the wind sounded like music, a gentle rhythm that seemed to echo her own heartbeat. She paused for a moment, letting the scene sink in, and then stepped onto the worn wooden porch. "Hello?" she called softly, unsure if anyone was near. From the corner of the yard, a man emerged, moving slowly with a calm deliberation that made her chest tighten with curiosity. He was tall, with sun-browned skin and hands roughened by years of work. His hair was dark, flecked with hints of silver at the temples, and his eyes were a warm, deep brown that seemed to see her completely in a single glance. "Hello," he said, his voice low but steady. "You must be Ibrar." She nodded, unsure what to say next. The silence stretched comfortably between them, filled only by the gentle whisper of the wind and the distant call of a bird. He held out his hand and she shook it tentatively, noting the surprising softness beneath his rough exterior. "I'm Aaron," he said. "I run this farm, mostly by myself." There was a quiet honesty in his words, a humility that made her feel immediately at ease. She smiled and, for the first time since arriving, felt a flicker of warmth that had nothing to do with the sun. The days that followed were slow and steady. Ibrar learned the rhythms of the farm, waking early to help with chores, feeding chickens, gathering eggs, and assisting in the vegetable garden. Aaron was patient with her, showing her how to handle tools, how to read the weather in the sky, and how to listen to the subtle signs of the land. At first, their conversations were brief, simple exchanges about work and the changing seasons. But as the days turned into weeks, a gentle familiarity grew between them. Aaron would tell her stories of the village, of his childhood on the land, of the storms and harvests that had shaped his life. And Ibrar, in turn, shared tales of the town she had left behind, of crowded streets and city lights, of laughter and music that had once filled her days. One evening, after a long day of tending the fields, they sat together on the porch, watching the sun melt behind the hills. The air was cool, scented with the faint sweetness of blooming flowers, and the only sounds were the soft chirping of crickets and the distant lowing of cattle. "I never realized how quiet the world could be," Ibrar said softly, leaning back against the railing. "It's comforting." Aaron nodded, his gaze on the horizon. "Quiet can be a gift," he said. "It lets you hear things you wouldn't notice otherwise. The land speaks if you take the time to listen." She smiled at the thought, feeling a deep sense of peace settle over her. For the first time in her life, she felt that the world was not rushing past her, demanding constant attention. Here she could breathe, could think, could simply be. As the weeks passed, Ibrar noticed subtle changes in herself. She felt stronger, more grounded, her mind calmer than it had ever been in the city's endless chaos. There was a rhythm to her days now, a gentle cadence that matched the sway of the wheat fields, the rise and fall of the sun, the quiet pulse of the earth beneath her feet. And slowly, almost imperceptibly, she began to notice Aaron in a new light. It was not just his strength or his skill with the land, but the small gestures, the way he listened, the way he noticed the details, the way he smiled at her when she stumbled, over a word. The way he offered a hand when she struggled with a heavy basket. There was a kindness in him that seemed rare, a quiet patience that made her feel seen and valued. One morning, as the sun rose pale and soft over the fields, Ibrar found herself walking beside him through the dew-kissed wheat. The air was crisp, carrying the faint scent of earth and grass, and the world seemed to hold its breath. "You've become quite good with the tools," Aaron said, glancing at her with a small smile. "Faster than I expected." She laughed softly, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "I'm learning from a patient teacher," she replied. He chuckled, the sound low and comforting. For a moment they walked in silence, the only sound the whisper of wheat against their legs. Then, almost as if testing the air, Aaron reached out and brushed his hand against hers. It was light, tentative, but it sent a warm current through her that made her heart beat a little faster. "Ibrar," he said gently, his voice careful, "I want you to feel at home here, not just as someone helping with the farm, but as someone I trust, someone I care about." Her breath caught, and she looked up at him, meeting his gaze. There was no rush, no pressure, only sincerity, a quiet strength that seemed to hold the world in place. She nodded, unable to speak, and for the first time, she felt the stirrings of something deeper than friendship. Over the next months, their bond grew with gentle certainty. They shared long walks through the fields, quiet afternoons repairing fences, and evenings watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of rose and gold. Aaron taught her to read the clouds, to feel the wind, to understand the language of the land. And in return, Ibrar brought laughter, stories, and a fresh perspective to his solitary life. It was during one of these golden evenings that Aaron took her to a hill overlooking the entire village. The wheat fields stretched like rivers of gold below them, the sky painted in a soft cascade of pinks and purples. He handed her a small bundle of wildflowers he had picked along the path. "For you," he said simply, his eyes gentle. Ibrar accepted them, her fingers brushing his. The gesture was simple, yet it carried a weight of emotion that words could not convey. She felt a warmth spread through her chest, a quiet joy that made her heart feel both full and peaceful. "I feel at peace here," she whispered. "More than I ever have." Aaron smiled, placing a hand lightly on her shoulder. "I've lived here all my life, and I never thought I could feel this way. Until you came along. You've brought something to this place I didn't know it was missing." The sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the fields. They stood together, side by side, letting the calm of the evening settle around them. There was no rush, no need for grand declarations, only the quiet understanding that had grown between them, a bond built on patience, trust, and shared moments of gentle beauty. Winter came softly, painting the fields in frost and silver. Ibrar learned to start the fire, to prepare hearty meals, and to care for the animals through the cold nights. Aaron was always near, a steady presence, offering guidance when needed, and sharing the small joys of life on the farm. And in the quiet of the winter evenings, as snow fell gently against the windows, they would sit together, hands brushing, hearts warming, content in the simple truth of being together. There was no need for dramatic gestures, no need for rushed declarations, only the slow, steady unfolding of love, like the gentle rise of the sun over the fields each morning. By spring, the wheat was green again, the air sweet with blooming flowers. Ibrar walked through the fields, feeling the soil under her feet, the sun on her face, and the hand of Aaron resting lightly against hers. She realized with a calm certainty that she had found not just a place to belong, but a person with whom life felt full, simple, and beautiful. The villagers often remarked on the change in her. "She's found her peace here," they would say, smiling knowingly. And indeed she had, through patience, kindness, and the gentle rhythm of life on the farm. She had discovered a love that was quiet, steady, and profoundly nourishing. It was not the kind of story shouted from rooftops or written in bold letters. It was a story lived in whispers of the wind, in the golden sway of wheat, in hands brushing, in laughter shared over morning tea. It was a story that moved slowly, like the seasons, unfolding with care and attention, and leaving behind a deep, lasting warmth. Ibrar looked over at Aaron one evening as they sat on the porch, the sun dipping low and painting the sky in hues of fire. She felt a calm certainty, a gentle happiness that filled every corner of her being. "Thank you," she said softly, leaning her head against his shoulder. He smiled, resting his cheek against hers. For what? For everything, she replied. For letting me belong here, and for letting me belong to you. And in that quiet, perfect moment, with the wind in the wheat and the world softened by twilight, Ibrar knew that she had found the home she had been searching for, not just in the village, but in the heart of the man who had patiently waited, quietly and steadfastly, for her to arrive. The music of the fields played on, a gentle, endless song, and as the stars appeared above, Ibrar felt for the first time that she was truly, completely at peace.